for our chapter 4 mini lecture, I decided to take a look at the first section of the chapter, which is genes at work. I know we probably all did this in biology, whatever, in high school, but it's a good review of it as well. So the first thing we need to know about genes is that who we are depends on our characteristics that we inherit from our parents. So we must understand that genes and their functions. We must understand their functions before trying to determine how much of our behavior is from nature versus nurture. So I'm sure we've heard of that comparison where there's the argument of our behavior results from nature, which is our genes and our parents, and then there's nurture. So that's the environment around us, influences around us, and all that. So the genes we inherit provide recipes for making proteins, and this section of I guess it's a subsection for the vocabulary. There's a good amount of it here, but it's very helpful to understand. So a trait is a physical or behavioral characteristic feature displayed by an individual. So we all have traits that that are expressed in our daily lives. And then you have proteins, which are long strings of amino acids, which I'll get to in a bit, and the basic building material of organisms. And then you have the nucleus, which is the spherical central structure of a cell that contains the chromosomes, and then chromosomes are condensed strands of DNA and associated molecules found in the nucleus of the cell. And then DNA is a long molecule that encodes hereditary information, and it's coiled up to form chromosomes in the nucleus of cells. A gene is a length of DNA that encodes the information for making a protein. And then nucleotides are 4 subunits of DNA that combine in different ways to specify which protein the cell will make. And some nucleotides, there are 4 different of them, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, and they're often abbreviated to A, T, C, and G. And then you have amino acids, which are basic building blocks of proteins up here. But amino acids are subunits of proteins strung together in a sequence that form particular protein molecules. So proteins are comprised of amino acids, obviously, and the different combinations of the 20 amino acids can produce an enormous number of possible proteins. A cell uses information from genes to string together the right sequence of amino acids to make each protein, and usually these cells do it correctly. If the correct amino acids are strung together in the correct order, the protein will have the right shape and do its job. So what I mean by job is the sense of smell, sense of sight, being able to see something. However, if the amino acids are strung together incorrectly, the ability to see may be it may not work. So an example of this is a person may be born blind if their amino acids are strung together in the wrong order, which would cause one amino acid needed to get light to the brain replaced, and therefore the person is blind, so that doesn't really make sense. But if they're strung together incorrectly, for example, if the amino acid needed to reflect light to the brain in order to be able to create an image, to be able to see, if that one amino acid is replaced, if it's incorrectly labeled, then the person is going to be blind. So the next section is about our mother and father giving us slightly different recipes for each protein. So for the vocab, there's fertilization, which is the fusion of egg and sperm, otherwise known as sex, and then alleles, which are 1 or 2 more different versions of a gene. And then a mutation is a change in the nucleotide sequence of a gene as a result of unfaithful replication. So during fertilization, the egg and sperm both contain 23 chromosomes each, and so for a total of 46 in each person. And the difference in recipes are the different amino acids. And an example of this, it was used in the book, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So if you can think of it as a recipe for French toast, French toast calls for cinnamon, while another recipe calls for nutmeg. And in the case of the proteins, the differences in recipes are different amino acids. So each individual only has two alleles, which is a different thing to bring up, which is the reason for diversity. So the different alleles, each individual only has two of them. So the diversity of alleles is one of the reasons that humans, we are diverse as a community. And then the next section is if we get a non-functional allele from one parent, the other allele usually spares us from harm. And this is small, but it's just the vocabulary is genotype and phenotype. So a genotype is all the genetic information that one specific individual has inherited. And a phenotype is the sum of an individual's physical characteristics at one particular time. So essentially, if you are missing a key protein, you really wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have survived. As embryos, living humans are very complex, and so as embryos, if you're missing a key protein, you wouldn't have survived. And then a genotype is set at fertilization and stays the same for the rest of your life. So the last section is about dominant and recessive alleles and how they work in pea plants. Pea plants is the example used in the textbook. So the vocab for this, dominant just means in the context of heredity, an allele that affects an individual's phenotype regardless of the other allele carried for that gene. And then recessive in the context of heredity is an allele that affects an individual's phenotype only when it is present on both chromosomes. So in pea plants, there are purple and white flowers or leaves. And if crossbreeding a white and purple plant will lead to a purple plant because the purple is dominant while the white is recessive. However, if you were to take two white flowered pea plants, and crossbreed them, obviously the resulting pea plant would be white because there's no purple allele in those that can be passed on at all. And that's really it for this section. It's pretty interesting in terms of genetics and all that. And yeah, that's it.